The courtyard burned with torchlight, flames hissing against the damp night air. Shadows danced along cracked stone walls, stretching long and jagged like claws reaching for the girl at the center. Every face in the gathering turned toward her, some sneering, some smirking, none merciful. Her wrists were locked in the grip of two pack members, claws digging into her skin hard enough to draw blood. They dragged her forward, half lifting her, half forcing her to stumble across the uneven ground until she stood beneath the circle of torches. She could hear them breathing. Dozens of them. Their chests rising, falling, heavy with anticipation. Hungry for her humiliation. Her dress hung in tatters. Not from accident, not from battle. Torn deliberately, shredded by hands that wanted to strip her of every shred of dignity. The neckline yanked so low she fought to cover herself with trembling arms, but the crowd only laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "Look at her," someone jeered. "The cursed one. The flame-born freak." Another voice, harsher, shouted, "She should have been drowned at birth." The laughter rolled over her like waves, each word heavier than the last. She had known shame before, known rejection in whispers behind her back, in the way children were pulled away from her touch, in the way mothers turned their faces when she passed. But tonight they wanted more than whispers. They wanted spectacle. The pack elder stepped forward, his silvered hair gleaming in the firelight, his eyes hard as stone. He raised his hand and the noise stilled. Only the crackle of fire remained. His voice carried across the courtyard, deep and unyielding. "This child is not one of us. She is not wolf, not woman, not kin. She is danger wrapped in flesh. Her blood is poison, her presence a curse upon the moon itself." Her stomach clenched as his words slammed into her. She should have expected them, but hearing them in front of everyone, hearing them declared like law, it broke something inside her. He gestured, and one of the guards yanked at her sleeve, tearing fabric clean down her arm. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the pack, not at her exposed skin, but at what they thought they saw beneath it, faint sparks, silver glimmers crawling under her flesh like veins of fire. "She carries the flame," a woman whispered, voice trembling with fear. "No," another spat, "she carries death." Her arm shook. Not from weakness. Not even from fear. From the effort it took to contain it, the strange, burning energy coiling beneath her skin, demanding to be released. Every heartbeat was a battle. Every breath scraped like shards of glass. And still, she refused to cry. Tears would have pleased them. They wanted her broken. They wanted her to fall to her knees, beg for forgiveness, confirm the story they told about her. But she would not give them that. She stood there, blood on her arms, rags clinging to her body, and she lifted her chin. Her voice, when it came, was low, ragged, but steady. "You can strip me. You can call me cursed. But you will never make me bow." A hiss of outrage swept the crowd. A rock flew from somewhere, striking her shoulder. Pain flared, but she refused to flinch. Another strike followed, then another. She closed her eyes, bracing against the sting, against the heat of shame crawling up her throat. Then the elder spoke again, louder this time, words ringing like a verdict. "Cast her out. Tonight she ceases to belong to this pack. She is banished. She is nothing. Nothing." The words struck harder than the stones. Harder than the claws. It echoed in her chest, in the hollow places where love once lived, where belonging once sat like a warm fire. The guards shoved her forward, toward the gates that led out into the dark forest. But before she crossed that line, before the night swallowed her whole, a change swept the air. The torches bent as if bowing to an unseen force. The flames hissed higher, whipped by a sudden wind. A ripple of unease ran through the pack. Growls quieted. The laughter died. Heads turned, eyes searching the shadows beyond the courtyard. And then, he stepped into the light. Tall, broad-shouldered. His presence swallowed the space the way the moon swallowed the night sky. He didn't rush. He didn't need to. Every stride was deliberate, heavy with authority. The kind of authority that didn't need to be claimed, because it was already written in the marrow of his bones. The Alpha. The pack stiffened. Some lowered their eyes. Others pressed fists against their chests in instinctive respect. Only the elder's jaw tightened, his pride fighting the instinct to bow. The girl, still held in the guard's grip, forced herself to meet his gaze. She had heard whispers of him. Stories carried on hushed tongues about the billionaire alpha who ruled these lands. Ruthless, unyielding, haunted. A man with wealth beyond measure and power no one dared challenge. But nothing had prepared her for the reality. His eyes, catching the torchlight, gleamed like molten gold. They didn't just see her, they pierced her, stripped away the walls she had built around herself, searching for something deeper. He stopped just a few feet away. The guards holding her faltered, uncertain whether to keep her restrained or release her. The crowd leaned forward, breathless, waiting. The alpha's gaze lingered on the torn fabric of her dress, on the scratches bleeding down her arms, on the defiance still carved into her face despite everything. Something unreadable flickered across his expression. Anger, perhaps. Or recognition. Then, without a word, he unclasped the heavy cloak draped across his shoulders. Thick, black, lined with fur. A cloak that marked his authority, his wealth, his untouchable status. He stepped closer, so close she could feel the heat radiating off his body, and with a single movement, he swept it around her. The fabric fell over her like night itself, swallowing her shame, covering her wounds, pressing warmth against her trembling skin. The courtyard gasped. Every sound stilled. And his voice, when it came, was low and cold, carrying the weight of command that no one dared defy. "If she is cursed," he said, each word slicing through the silence, "then she is mine." The crowd recoiled. Murmurs rose, fear threading every whisper. Some snarled, some objected, but none dared step forward. The elder's face twisted, fury barely contained, but even he did not challenge the alpha outright. The girl's heart pounded, not with relief, but with confusion. She didn't know this man. She didn't know why he would claim her, why he would shield her in front of all who despised her. The cloak was heavy on her shoulders, the scent of pine and smoke clinging to it, grounding her even as her mind reeled. Her knees buckled. Exhaustion pulled at her. Her power, the dangerous flame under her skin, flickered and strained. For a moment, she swayed, certain she would collapse. But his hand shot out, steadying her not gently, but firmly, as if reminding her she wasn't allowed to fall. The crowd's fear turned to whispers of suspicion. Why her? What does he see in the cursed one? She'll bring ruin to us all. But the alpha ignored them. His gaze stayed locked on her as though nothing else existed. In that moment, she realized two things. One, that she was no longer alone, and two, that whatever his reasons, whatever his demons, this man was about to change everything. This is Sophie's Romance Collections, where stories of heartbreak, betrayal, and undying passion are told. If you believe no one should suffer in silence, subscribe. Because here, every tale finds its fire. The courtyard held its breath. His words still echoed in the silence. If she is cursed, then she is mine. No one moved. No one dared. The torches sputtered in the sudden draft that seemed to arrive with him, a gust of wind that lifted embers into the air like sparks shaken from a fire. The girl's pulse thundered in her ears. The weight of his cloak pressed against her shoulders, its fabric thick, carrying his scent, smoke, pine, and something darker, something primal that made her skin prickle. It wasn't comfort. It wasn't mercy. It was possession, and every eye in the courtyard knew it. The guards who had held her shifted uncomfortably, their claws withdrawing, their grip loosening. They released her as if her skin burned them, stepping back under the weight of his presence. She swayed, but before she could steady herself, his hand closed around her arm. Not soft, not tender, firm, unyielding. His touch told her two things. She wasn't free, and she wasn't falling. Gasps spread through the pack like ripples on water. No one spoke her name aloud, not anymore. To them, she was the cursed one, the flame-born or worse. But when his lips parted, his voice low enough that only she could hear, he spoke her name. Her knees nearly gave out. Her name, spoken in his voice, carved through her like heat and ice all at once. How did he know it? She had been cast out, forgotten, erased. And yet here he stood, holding her with a certainty that unsettled every barrier she had built. Her throat ached with questions she couldn't form. The elder's voice cut across the moment. You shame yourself, Alpha. To cover her, to claim her, this is weakness. The Alpha's head turned slowly, gold eyes locking onto the elder. He didn't bare his teeth. He didn't growl. He didn't need to. His silence carried more threat than a dozen snarls. The elder faltered, words withering in his mouth. The crowd shifted, torn between loyalty and fear. Then, from the far side of the courtyard, movement broke the tension. A cluster of young wolves stepped forward, their eyes blazing not with respect, but with rebellion. She doesn't belong, one spat, voice shaking with bravado. If you won't cast her out, then we will. In a blink, they lunged. The girl barely had time to inhale before claws slashed toward her. She jerked back, stumbling beneath the weight of the cloak. But she didn't fall, not because of her own strength, but because the Alpha was faster. He moved like lightning, like shadow. One moment beside her, the next a blur of motion between her and the attackers. His cloak snapped as he spun, dragging her with him just enough to keep her out of reach. The first wolf struck and met nothing but the Alpha's fist. Bone cracked. The sound was sharp, sickening, final. The attacker hit the ground, groaning, air ripped from his lungs. Another came from behind. The Alpha twisted, catching the wolf's wrist mid-swipe. With a wrench, he sent him crashing into the dirt. A knee pinned his chest, claws pressed against his throat. The wolf froze, eyes wide, caught between fear and fury. Two more rushed together. The Alpha didn't hesitate. He shoved the pinned wolf aside and met them head-on. One claw sliced across his arm, tearing fabric but barely breaking skin. His counterstrike was brutal, a backhand that sent the wolf sprawling into the torchlight. The other tried to leap onto his back, but the Alpha rolled his shoulder, catching him midair and slamming him down with a force that rattled the ground. The girl's breath caught. She should have looked away, should have shielded herself from the violence. But she couldn't. She was riveted, caught between awe and dread. His movements were precise, deadly, controlled. He wasn't fighting like a man defending himself. He was fighting like a predator asserting dominance. Blood stained the dirt. Groans filled the air. The attackers writhed, defeated, while the Alpha stood over them, chest heaving, gold eyes burning in the firelight. Then, silence again. He turned back to her, his cloak still draped across her shoulders, his presence towering, suffocating. She met his gaze, searching for softness, for explanation, for anything human in the intensity radiating from him. But what she found was something else entirely. Why are you running in my woods? His voice was sharp, cutting, laced with an accusation she didn't understand. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Running? She hadn't run into his woods. She had been dragged here, humiliated, paraded before the pack like an offering. His eyes narrowed, as though he could see the denial forming on her tongue. He leaned closer, his words low, almost a growl. You think this was chance? That you ended here without reason? No. You crossed into my land. My pack. My law. And now you answer to me. Her chest tightened. She wanted to scream at him, to tell him he was wrong, that she hadn't chosen this, that she had never asked for his cloak, his claim, his questions. But her voice failed her, trapped under the weight of his authority. Something inside her flared, the dangerous, silver fire she had fought to keep buried. It pulsed, answering his challenge, burning against her ribs like it wanted out. She clenched her fists, desperate to contain it, terrified of what would happen if it escaped. He saw it. His eyes flicked to the faint glow seeping beneath her skin. For a heartbeat, his expression shifted, something like recognition, maybe even understanding. But it vanished as quickly as it came. He straightened, tearing his gaze away from her, turning instead to the pack still watching from the shadows. His voice rang out steady, final. She is under my protection. Any who defy that, defy me. The courtyard fell into uneasy silence. No one stepped forward. No one spoke. But the girl could feel it. The anger simmering beneath the quiet, the resentment coiling in every glance cast her way. She wasn't safe. Not truly. Not with them. Not even with him. His hand returned to her arm. "Walk," he ordered, guiding her toward the edge of the circle. She resisted, just enough to make her voice shake free. "Why?" The words slipped out raw, unplanned, desperate. His grip tightened, his jaw flexed. He didn't look at her when he answered. "Because you're mine now." Her stomach lurched, heat rushing through her veins. She hated the words. She hated the claim. And yet, somewhere deep inside, part of her didn't hate it at all. That terrified her more than the pack's cruelty ever could. They left the courtyard behind. The torches dimmed, the jeers and whispers fading into distance. But the silence between them was heavier than any noise. The night pressed in, trees looming like watchful sentinels, branches clawing at the sky. The forest was alive with sound. The rustle of leaves, the distant cry of an owl, the crunch of their footsteps against the dirt. She stole glances at him, at the rigid set of his shoulders, the way his hand never loosened from her arm. His presence radiated danger, but also something else, control, the kind that drew her in even as it repelled her. Her voice broke the silence, brittle and sharp. "You don't even know me." His gaze flicked toward her, gold eyes catching the moonlight. "I know enough." "No," she pressed, defiance burning through her fear. "You know nothing. You don't know what they've done. You don't know what I carry. You don't." "I know your name." The words cut her short. Her breath caught, heart slamming against her ribs. He had spoken it once before, softly, like a secret. Hearing it again now, his voice steady and unshaken, stole every thought from her mind. She stared at him, eyes wide, searching his face for answers. But he gave her none. Only the flicker of something unreadable in his expression, something like conflict, buried beneath stone. She looked away, clutching his cloak tighter around her body, shielding herself from the cold night air, from the weight of his gaze, from the war raging inside her own chest. The forest swallowed them, the last torchlight of the courtyard fading behind until only shadows remained. His hand still gripped her arm, firm, guiding, unyielding. She could feel the steady rhythm of his stride pulling her forward, but her mind was no longer fixed on the path ahead. It was unraveling, dragging her backward into memories she had buried, memories clawing their way to the surface with every echo of his words, "I know your name." Her name had once carried warmth. It had been sung to her as a child, whispered by her mother in moments of quiet, spoken with pride by her father. But those same syllables had turned to venom the day her kin branded her cursed. She remembered the circle of faces, her family among them, eyes hardened with fear and betrayal. She remembered the rough hands tearing at her dress, stripping her of dignity as if fabric could remove the thing inside her. The air had stung with smoke and shame, the voices of those she once trusted rising like a storm. They had not spoken her name with love that day. They had spat it with disgust, as though it alone was poison. And when they cast her out, it wasn't with silence. It was with laughter, sharp, cruel, echoing through the trees as she stumbled away barefoot, clutching rags to her chest. She blinked hard, dragging herself back into the present. The alpha's cloak now hung heavy on her shoulders, whole where her kin had left her torn, warm where they had left her shivering. Yet the memory still cut deep, a wound that never closed. Beneath her skin, the silver flame stirred, the forbidden power that had doomed her. It was the bloodline no one spoke of, the fire no one dared name. It lived in her veins, restless, hungry. Her kin had seen it once, the faint glow that bled through her skin in a moment of fear, and that had been enough. Enough to turn love into horror. Enough to turn family into executioners. She had begged them not to send her away. She had dropped to her knees, hands clutching at her father's cloak, begging for mercy. But his eyes had been stone, colder than winter. "You are not mine," he had said, voice breaking in a way that told her he hated himself for it, but not enough to stop. She had run until her lungs burned, until branches carved lines into her arms and face. She had slept by rivers, the ground cold and unyielding beneath her, hunger gnawing like an animal inside her belly. She had scavenged berries, stolen scraps, drank water cupped in her trembling hands. She had grown used to silence, the kind that screamed louder than any voice. And at night, the nightmares came. Flames licking her skin from the inside out, silver fire burning her alive. She woke gasping, clutching her chest, certain she would ignite before dawn. Alone, she pressed her face into the dirt, muffling sobs that no one would ever hear. Yet somehow she survived. Her feet stumbled over a root, jerking her from the memory. His grip tightened instantly, pulling her upright before she could fall. She caught her breath, startled by the steadiness of his strength. He didn't speak, didn't look at her, but his hand lingered a fraction longer than necessary before releasing her. She hated the way warmth spread through her chest at the simple act. She hated that his cloak shielded her from the chill, that his presence dulled the ache of loneliness she had carried for years. She wanted to shrug it off, throw it back in his face, scream that she didn't need him. But the truth gnawed at her, she did. At least for now. She stole a glance at him in the pale wash of moonlight. His profile was sharp, cut from shadow and silver. His jaw was clenched, his gaze fixed ahead, but there was a heaviness in his posture she hadn't noticed before. His steps were steady, but his breath was measured, controlled in a way that suggested restraint rather than ease. And then she saw it. When the cloak shifted as he moved, she caught the faint outline of scars across his arm, pale lines against skin that should have healed smooth. They weren't the wounds of one battle. They were the history of many. Some jagged, some precise, each carrying its own story of survival. The realization struck her, he carried his own ghosts. Her eyes lingered on him, curious despite herself. What did he hide behind that steel gaze? What torment carved those scars into him? Did he wake at night to his own nightmares, his own shadows pressing against his chest? He must have felt her staring, because his eyes slid to hers, sharp and unyielding. She froze, caught, her breath snagging in her throat. But for a heartbeat, just one, something flickered there. Not anger. Not command. Something softer, something he didn't want her to see. He looked away first. The silence between them thickened, heavy with things unspoken. She tightened her grip on the cloak around her shoulders, torn between tearing it off and clinging to it like a lifeline. She thought of the first time she had ever felt that silver flame within her. She had been a child, no more than 7, frightened by a storm that rattled the windows of her home. Her mother had held her close, whispering lullabies, when the fear surged into heat. Her skin had glowed faintly, shimmering beneath the surface. Her mother had gasped but not let go. She had stroked her hair, whispering, "Hide it, little one. Hide it, or they'll never forgive you." Her mother had known. And still, years later, she had stood with the others when they cast her out. The betrayal cut fresh every time she remembered. Now, walking beside this alpha who claimed her without permission, she wondered if history was repeating itself. Protection today, abandonment tomorrow. That was the pattern. That was the truth of her life. And yet, as the wind pressed colder, she pulled his cloak tighter, hating herself for the comfort it brought. He noticed. Of course he noticed. His voice broke the silence, low and rough, almost reluctant. "You think I don't see it," he said. "The weight you carry. The fire you hide." Her breath stilled. His gaze flicked to her again, gold eyes catching hers, unblinking. "You're not the only one with monsters under your skin." Her heart stumbled. The words were not gentle. They were not kind. But they were honest, and honesty was rarer than mercy. For the first time in years, she felt the faintest crack in the wall she had built around herself. And that terrified her most of all. The night deepened as he led her further into the woods, beyond the places she thought she knew. The trees grew older here, their trunks massive and twisted, roots breaking the earth as though they had been standing since the first dawn. Moss coated everything, glistening in the pale light of the moon, and the air grew colder with each step, not harsh but sacred, like the hush before a prayer. She wanted to ask where he was taking her, but his silence was unbreakable, and something in her heart whispered that to speak would shatter the fragile thread of awe that bound this moment. So she followed, barefoot against the damp earth, his cloak brushing the ground behind her, carrying the faint scent of smoke and iron. The forest opened suddenly, revealing a grove unlike any she had ever seen. The ground was soft with grass, untouched by frost, glowing faintly as though lit from beneath by embers. At the center stood a circle of stones, each carved with runes that pulsed with a dim light, alive as though breathing. The air trembled with whispers, not voices of the living, but echoes of something ancient, something that had been waiting. She froze at the threshold. The hair along her arms rose, her chest tightening as if invisible hands pressed against her ribs. The whispers grew louder, curling around her ears, tugging at her mind. She didn't understand the words, but her blood did. He turned to her then, his eyes reflecting the light of the stones, golden and unyielding. "This is where it begins," he said, voice steady but hushed, as though even he was wary of breaking the sanctity of the place. Her lips parted, questions flooding her tongue, but before she could speak, the ground beneath her feet hummed. The runes flared brighter, lines of fire tracing through the circle until the entire grove glowed. She staggered back, but his hand caught her, holding her steady as the light spilled upward, weaving into patterns that danced across the sky. Symbols she had never seen and yet somehow recognized burned above them: wings, flames, a wolf with eyes like suns. Her vision blurred. The grove fell away. She was somewhere else. Standing in a vast hall of fire and stone, shadows of wolves stretching along the walls. A voice thundered, not from a throat but from the bones of the earth itself. "Child of the flame, bearer of the lost bloodline, the one who unites or destroys." Her knees buckled. She tried to deny it, to scream that they had the wrong girl, that she was no savior, no chosen one. But the voice only grew louder, wrapping around her like chains. Images flooded her, wolves bowing at her feet, flames rising from her hands, villages burning in silver fire, and his face, the Alpha's, torn between devotion and fear. "No," she gasped, clutching her head, trembling as the visions burned. "I am nothing. I am broken." The ground gave way beneath her. She fell, tumbling back into the grove, her body striking the earth as though the vision had hurled her away. The whispers quieted, the light dimmed, and for a moment there was only silence. Then she felt it, the weight of eyes on her. Around the edges of the grove, shadows moved. Wolves had gathered, silent, their fur shimmering under the moonlight. They hadn't made a sound when they entered, but now they stood, watching her. And as she met their eyes, they bowed, one after another, lowering their heads until the entire pack lay prostrate before her. Her breath caught, terror clawing at her throat. She staggered to her feet, shaking her head violently. "No, don't. I'm not." But the glow beneath her skin betrayed her. The silver sparks that had always flickered in moments of fear now blazed openly, threading through her veins, pulsing with each beat of her frantic heart. The wolves saw it, felt it, and their reverence only deepened. She stumbled back, hands clutching the cloak tighter around her. "Stop. I don't want this. I never asked for this." The Alpha stepped closer, his shadow stretching long against the glowing stones. His gaze held her, unflinching. "It doesn't matter what you want," he said softly, but the softness was laced with something heavier: truth, inevitability. "It's in you. It always has been." Her voice cracked. "Then they were right to cast me out. They were right to fear me." His jaw tightened. He closed the distance, stopping just before her, his presence towering yet strangely steadying. "No," he said. "They were cowards. They saw power they could not control and chose to destroy it instead of understand it." His hand hovered near her face, but did not touch, fingers curling as though fighting himself. "You are more than they ever believed. More than you believe now." Her throat ached, torn between a sob and a scream. The whispers returned, gentler this time, wrapping around her like smoke. "Child of the flame." The words rang inside her skull, heavy with promise and curse alike. She wanted to run. She wanted to stay. She wanted to burn the grove to ash and erase it all, and she wanted to collapse into his arms and beg him to tell her it wasn't true. Instead, she whispered the only truth she could manage. "I don't know who I am anymore." He studied her in silence, his eyes searching hers as if he could see through the trembling, the fear, the shame. And then, with a weight that carried no hesitation, he spoke. "You're mine." The words hit her harder than any vision. Not a command, not a threat, but a vow. His cloak still clung to her shoulders, heavy with his scent, his claim woven into every thread. She hated how her heart surged at the sound, how a spark of hope flickered where despair had taken root. But hope was dangerous. Hope burned brighter than fear, and fire had always been her curse. She shook her head, clutching the cloak as though it were both shield and shackle. "You don't know me. You don't know what I've done, what I've lost." "I know enough," he said, eyes blazing. "I know that the grove recognizes you, that the pack bows to you, that the flame answers when you bleed. You can run from it, but you cannot erase it. And you cannot erase the way I see you." Her breath caught again, this time not from terror, but from the unbearable pull between them, the thread tightening, drawing her closer even as every wound inside her screamed to resist. The grove pulsed once more, faint light fading into the earth until only the stones remained, silent witnesses to the truth neither of them could deny. And as the night pressed in, she knew this was only the beginning. The grove had only just fallen silent when the air split open with a growl so sharp it rattled the stones. She jerked, her pulse thundering, as shadows broke the sacred circle. Figures poured in from the tree-lean, not silent like the wolves who had bowed, but loud, bristling, snarling. At their head strode a man broad-shouldered and scarred, his aura thick with dominance, his eyes burning with challenge. His pack fanned out behind him, dozens strong, their claws already unsheathing in anticipation of blood. The grove's light seemed to recoil from them, dimming as if the earth itself rejected their presence. The alpha beside her stepped forward, shielding her instinctively, his golden gaze hardening to steel. The air between the two men crackled, charged with a tension older than either of them. Rival alphas were storms waiting to break, and this storm had come for her. Elias, the rival, sneered, voice sharp enough to cut. "I wondered how long it would take before you revealed your weakness." His eyes slid to her, raking over her with disdain, and the smirk that followed twisted her stomach. "So this is it. The cursed flame. You cloak her like a queen when she's nothing but ruin." The words hit her like claws, sharper than the jeers of her old pack. She flinched, but Elias's stance never wavered. "She is under my protection," Elias said, his tone low but resonant, each word carrying weight that shook the grove. "Touch her, and you touch me." The rival laughed, the sound jagged, feral. "Then you've already condemned yourself. Don't you see? She is the prophecy that will bring fire down upon us all. You shelter her, and you doom your pack." His wolves growled in unison, a chorus of hatred. Some spat words like knives, witch, cursed, destroyer. Others simply bared their fangs, the message clear. Her throat tightened. Each insult was an echo of the past, but louder, heavier, amplified by the presence of so many eyes. She wanted to vanish, to sink into the earth and be forgotten. But the cloak around her shoulders reminded her she was seen, claimed, defended, and that defense was about to be paid for in blood. Elias moved first. The shift rippled through him with terrifying speed. Bones snapping, muscles tearing and reforming, his body bending to the will of the beast within. Where a man had stood, now loomed a wolf larger than any she had ever seen, black fur streaked with silver, eyes burning molten gold. Power rolled off him in waves, enough to make the rivals' wolves falter for a breath. Then chaos erupted. Claws tore through the night, fangs clashed, the grove exploding into violence. The rival shifted just as quickly, his form a monstrous gray, scarred muzzle snapping as he lunged. They collided with the force of thunder, the ground quaking beneath them. She stumbled back, pressing against one of the glowing stones, her chest heaving. All around her, wolves fought, snarls and howls mixing with the sickening crunch of bone and the hot scent of blood. The sacred grove became a battlefield, ancient whispers drowned beneath the roar of war. Her eyes locked on Elias. He fought with a ferocity that was terrifying, every strike precise, every movement fueled by primal rage. He was beautiful in his brutality, silver claws slashing through fur, golden eyes unyielding. But even he was outnumbered. The rivals' wolves circled, lunging in coordinated waves, snapping at his flanks, dragging at his limbs. Elias roared, shaking them off, blood spraying as his fangs tore into one attacker's throat. But another lunged from the side, teeth sinking into his shoulder, forcing him to stumble. Her breath caught. Pain radiated through her as though it were her own. She wanted to scream, to run to him, to tear them away with her bare hands. But she froze, powerless, her own body trembling with the sparks of silver fire that begged to ignite. A voice hissed near her, cruel and low, too close. She turned to see one of the rival wolves, half-shifted, eyes gleaming with malice. "You'll be the end of him," he spat, lips curling. "He will have to choose, his people or you. And you already know which way that choice will fall." The words sliced deeper than claws. She staggered, ball rising in her throat. Her gaze darted back to Elias, locked in brutal combat, blood staining his fur. Could it be true? Would he cast her aside when the cost grew too high? A scream tore from her chest, not of fear, but of fury at herself for doubting, for hoping. Sparks flared along her skin, silver light bleeding from her hands. The rival wolf recoiled, eyes widening in sudden fear, but before the fire could consume her, Elias's roar cut through the night. He slammed his rival to the ground, jaws at his throat, golden eyes burning. The grove stilled, every wolf holding its breath. The rival thrashed, but Elias pressed harder, his teeth breaking skin. For a moment, it seemed victory was his. Then a voice rose from the crowd of rival wolves, sharp as a blade. "If you keep her, we will burn. If you claim her, you will lose us." Others echoed it, snarling, shouting, their fear twisting into fury. "Choose Elias. Your pack or the cursed flame." Her chest caved at the words. They weren't just threats, they were ultimatums. And as Elias's gaze flicked to her, still glowing faintly with silver fire, her heart shattered. He hesitated. Only for a breath, but it was enough. The rival beneath him wrenched free, scrambling back, and the grove erupted into chaos once more. Wolves surged forward, and in the fray, she was shoved aside, separated from him by a wall of snarling bodies. She fought to reach him, but every step was blocked, every path cut off. The whispers returned, cruel and sharp, twisting her gut. "He will not choose you. He cannot." Through the clash of claws and blood, she caught his voice, raw and commanding, bellowing to his pack. "Stand down." The words cut through the violence, freezing the grove in uneasy stillness. Wolves backed away, panting, bleeding, but their eyes burned with doubt. The rival staggered upright, his muzzle dripping crimson, but he smiled through the blood. "Stand down," he mocked, his voice hoarse. "Because you know it's true. She will cost you everything." Elias didn't answer. He turned, golden eyes meeting hers across the carnage, his chest heaving, his fur matted with blood. For the first time, she saw not certainty but conflict in his gaze. And then, slowly, painfully, he stepped back. Her breath stopped. He wasn't pushing her towards safety. He was pushing her away. The silence that followed was worse than any battle. Her body trembled, the silver flame sputtering under the weight of heartbreak. She wrapped the cloak tighter around herself, though it no longer felt like protection. It felt like exile. Her voice broke as she whispered into the hollow air, unheard above the growls of the rival pack. "Not again." And with her heart in pieces, she turned and fled into the trees, leaving blood, fire, and him behind. The forest swallowed her as she ran, branches whipping her skin, breath ragged, vision blurred with the sting of tears. Her body ached, lungs burning, yet she couldn't stop. The weight of his hesitation pressed heavier than the claws that had grazed her in the chaos. Every step away from the grove felt like tearing her own heart out, but she kept going, because to stay would mean to watch him choose his people over her again. At last her legs gave out. She stumbled against a fallen tree, collapsed to her knees, and pressed trembling hands to the earth. Her cloak slipped from her shoulders, pooling like shadow at her feet. Blood smeared her palm. She didn't even know if it was hers. Her chest heaved, and in the hollow space of her ribs, something darker stirred. The flame. It pulsed faintly, as if it, too, had been wounded. The forest was silent now, save for her uneven breath and the restless whisper of leaves. She curled into herself, rocking, trying to make herself small enough to disappear. But the air around her kept shifting, as though the flame beneath her skin was calling, refusing to be buried. She didn't hear him at first. A soft crunch of leaves, a weight on the air, then his scent drifted through the night. Earth, iron, the faintest trace of smoke. Her heart leapt even as her body recoiled, torn between relief and fury. Enough, she whispered to herself, voice breaking. No more. But then his shadow fell across her. She looked up, and there he was. Elias. No longer in his wolf form, but bare, his body streaked with blood and dirt, his chest rising with labored breath. His eyes found hers in the darkness, gold-dimmed but unbroken. Her throat closed. She wanted to scream at him, to claw at his chest for the hesitation that had shattered her. Instead, silence stretched, taut as a blade, until he crouched before her. I looked for you, he said, his voice hoarse. She shook her head, retreating a fraction. Why? To finish what they started? To tell me again that I don't belong? Pain flickered across his face. He didn't answer with words, only extended a hand. She stared at it, every muscle screaming to refuse. And yet, the fire inside her pulsed, aching toward him as though drawn. Against her own will, she placed her trembling fingers in his. He pulled her up gently, steadying her as though she were fragile glass. For a moment, neither spoke. The night pressed in, heavy with all they hadn't said. Finally, Elias broke the silence. Come, he murmured. You're bleeding. She wanted to argue, but exhaustion hollowed her. She let him guide her deeper into the forest, until the trees parted to reveal a small clearing. He knelt quickly, striking flint, and soon a fire cracked to life, its glow pushing back the shadows. She sank down across from him, wrapping her arms around her knees. The firelight painted his skin in shades of amber and shadow, highlighting every scar carved across his chest, his arms, his shoulders. She couldn't look away. He noticed. Slowly, deliberately, he extended his arm, showing her one jagged scar that ran from his collarbone to his ribs. 7 years old, he said quietly. My father threw me into the wilds. Said if I wanted to be alpha one day, I had to survive the night. His mouth twisted, but not into a smile. I did. Barely. Her breath caught. The scar wasn't just flesh. It was proof of a childhood carved in cruelty. She pressed her hand against her own ribs, where the flame still throbbed. That's when you stopped being a child. He nodded once, eyes fixed on the fire. It was never allowed. Every scar since is a lesson. Betrayal. Survival. Leadership. You learn quickly that to show weakness is to bleed out before the pack even strikes. His gaze lifted, locking with hers. Tonight, they saw weakness. Her heart lurched. Because of me. His silence confirmed it. She lowered her eyes, shame burning hotter than the fire between them. Then why follow me? Why not let them take me, if it means keeping your pack safe? Elias leaned forward, the fire reflecting in his eyes like molten gold. His voice dropped to a low growl. Because I don't turn from what is mine to protect. Her chest tightened. She should have felt relief, but the flame inside her writhed, restless, dangerous. She pressed her hands hard against her knees, nails digging into flesh. You don't understand. I'm not just danger to them. I'm danger to you. To anyone I touch. His brow furrowed. What do you mean? Her throat constricted. She hadn't told anyone this, not fully. Not even herself. But his gaze pinned her, demanding truth. She swallowed hard. The flame, it's growing. I feel it every time I breathe, every time I lose control. It burns. Not just me. Anyone close. If I let it out, it will consume. And I don't know if I'll be able to stop. The words broke something in her, and she shuddered. Her confession hung heavy in the clearing, a truth she had carried like chains. She expected him to recoil, to curse her, to call her what the others had, witch, curse, destroyer. But he didn't move. His eyes softened, and slowly, he reached across the fire. His hand hovered just above hers, not touching, but close enough that she felt his warmth. Then let it burn me, he whispered. Her head snapped up, eyes wide. You don't know what you're saying. I do. His tone was unyielding. You think the fire makes you dangerous. But I see the truth. It makes you powerful. And I am not afraid of power. Her breath shook, tears pricking. You should be. His hand lowered until his fingers brushed hers, a whisper of contact that sent sparks racing through her veins. She gasped, but the fire didn't lash out. It pulsed, yes, but softer now, humming in rhythm with his heartbeat. Time stilled. The world narrowed to the space between them, the crackle of fire, the mingling of breath. His eyes searched hers, not for weakness, not for fear, but for her. All of her. Her lips parted, a wordless plea caught between them. She leaned forward, drawn by something older than choice, older than fear. The air trembled, firelight flickering across their faces as his mouth hovered just a breath from hers. Then he stopped. His lips curved, not in retreat, but in vow. His voice was rough, reverent. I see you. All of you. And I do not turn away. Her chest broke open at the words. For the first time, the flame inside her eased, not silenced, not gone, but cradled, as though it, too, had been seen. The kiss didn't come. But something deeper did. Trust, raw and trembling, unfurled between them, fragile as new fire, strong as the earth beneath their feet. And for the first time, she believed she might not have to burn alone. The night after the fire felt deceptively calm. The world outside the clearing whispered of storms yet to come, but for one fragile heartbeat, she allowed herself to imagine safety. The crackle of flames, the warmth of his cloak draped over her shoulders, the weight of his vow, it had been enough to steady her trembling hands. But dawn came mercilessly. Elias led her back, his expression carved in stone. She tried not to read the silence as regret, yet every step toward the pack's territory coiled dread tighter in her chest. The closer they came, the more the air thickened with unease. By the time they reached the council grounds, the ring of ancient stones where judgment was passed, the weight was suffocating. Torches burned bright even in daylight, a show of ritual of power. Wolves gathered, eyes sharp, voices low with anticipation. She felt them all before she saw them, the ripple of hostility pressing like a tide against her skin. And then she saw the circle. Elders, alphas, lieutenants. All waiting. All watching. Elias's jaw tightened. He did not look at her as he guided her into the ring, but his hand at her back was steady. She clung to that single gesture, even as her pulse hammered like war drums. A voice rang out. Elder Kale, the one whose authority even Elias rarely defied. His gray eyes glittered like steel as they swept over her. So, he said slowly, the girl returns. Cloaked. Shielded. As if we do not see what festers beneath. Murmurs rose. She felt them crawl across her skin, whispers of curse, of danger. Her mouth dried, but she refused to bow her head. Then came the voice that shattered her. Solara carries the flame. Her breath locked. The voice was soft, deliberate, and it belonged to someone she had trusted. Leora. The one who had once pressed herbs to her wounds, who had whispered that not all wolves despised her. The one she thought might have been a friend. Solara's heart lurched as every eye turned to her. The whispers erupted into roars, shouts, accusations. Cursed. Witch. Doom. She staggered back, her chest heaving. Leora, why? Leora's face twisted, not in cruelty, but in something worse, conviction. Because truth cannot stay hidden. You burn, Solara. I saw it. The silver beneath your skin. You think you can bury it, but fire always finds a way out. And when it does, her voice rose, slicing the air. It will destroy us all. The circle erupted. Wolves shouted over one another, their voices a storm of fear and fury. Elder Kale raised his hand, and silence fell sharp and heavy. You hear her, he said coldly. The prophecy speaks clear. The child of flame will bring ruin, not salvation. Shall we wait for her fire to devour us? Solara's knees trembled. She wanted to scream, to deny, but her throat locked. The flame within her, stirred by fear, began to thrum, hot and insistent. She wrapped her arms tight around herself, desperate to hold it in. Elias moved then. He stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chaos. Enough. His eyes burned gold as he glared at Kale, then at the crowd. You twist prophecy to feed your fear. She is not doom. She is more. The words struck her, but so did the pause that followed. His hesitation. His people's eyes bore into him, demanding his loyalty. And for one heartbeat, too long, he wavered. The world tilted. Her chest cracked open with betrayal sharper than claws. She backed away, shaking her head, vision blurring with unshed tears. You don't believe it either, she whispered, voice shattering. You think I'm the curse they say I am. Elias's mouth parted. Solara. But she didn't wait. The fire inside her surged, ignited by anguish, by the sting of his silence. It clawed up her ribs, searing her throat, bursting from her skin in silver sparks. Gasps rippled through the circle as light spilled from her palms, uncontrollable, wild. No, she cried, clutching at herself, but the flame roared louder, hungry. Wolves stumbled back, eyes wide with terror. Some shifted halfway, growls trembling in their throats. She staggered from the circle, flames flickering across her arms, her hair whipping in the heat. Stay back. Her voice broke, raw with fear. I don't want this, I can't. But the fire answered only with violence. It lashed outward in a sudden burst, scorching the earth, sending wolves leaping away. Cries filled the air, claws scraping stone. Even those who had been silent now recoiled, their fear naked. Elder Kale's voice thundered above it all. Behold, the curse revealed. The words slammed into her chest. She stumbled backward, horror dawning as faces she once knew twisted with revulsion. Hands that had once steadied her now pointed, accusing. She saw mothers shielding children, warriors baring teeth, and worst of all Elias, frozen, torn between the fire she could not cage and the pack he was sworn to protect. Something inside her broke. She turned and fled, flames streaking behind her like a comet tail. Branches ignited where she brushed them, the earth smoking beneath her feet. Her breath came ragged, each sob fueling the fire until the night itself seemed aflame. She ran until the forest blurred, until her legs nearly gave. Her power raged unchecked, spilling light into shadows, painting her as target and monster both. Her tears hissed against her own heat, and in the hollow of her chest one truth echoed with merciless clarity. She was everything they feared, and she would never be anything else. The forest burned in echoes of her despair. Smoke clung to the branches like mourning veils, ash drifted as though the heavens themselves had turned to dust. Solara stumbled into a clearing, her chest heaving, her arms ablaze with trembling light she could not suppress. Every step scorched the ground beneath her feet. She sank to her knees. Her fingers dug into the soil, desperate to anchor herself, but the earth hissed beneath her palms. Please, her voice broke. Stop. I don't want this. The fire inside her answered with defiance. It surged against her ribs, pulsed through her veins, rose into her throat until her sob became a scream raw, jagged, cracking the night in two. The flames shot upward, a pillar of silver fire lancing into the sky. For a moment it illuminated everything, the mountains, the rivers, the far-off watchfires of her enemies. She had revealed herself to all. And they came. The first shadows moved between the trees. Eyes gleamed, too many, too fast. Shapes that were not wholly wolf nor wholly man. Beasts conjured by hate, drawn by prophecy. The rival alphas had not waited. They had unleashed what should never have walked the earth. The air thickened with their growls, guttural, broken things that rattled bone. Solara staggered to her feet, trembling. Her body screamed for her to run, but something in her chest shifted, heavy, resolute. For the first time, she did not turn away from the fear clawing up her spine. She straightened. Ash swirled around her as the clearing filled with enemies. Dozens. Fangs glinted in torchlight. Fur bristled, claws scraped soil. And behind them, towering like a living shadow, the one who had orchestrated it all. Kale. The elder whose voice had condemned her, whose ambition had long sought to twist prophecy for his own power. His eyes burned with fanatic fire as he spread his arms, welcoming the carnage. "This is the moment," he thundered, his voice shaking the trees. "Child of flame, you are the ruin foretold. Tonight you burn for us, or you burn with us." Wolves snarled their agreement. Solara's chest heaved. The words sliced through her: ruin, curse, doom. All the names she had carried since exile, each one a chain. Her knees nearly buckled beneath the weight of them. But then something else stirred beneath her skin. Not the wild, reckless blaze that had betrayed her before. Something older. Something steadier. The fire did not want to consume her. It wanted to crown her. She closed her eyes. For one fragile breath, she let go. Not in surrender, but in acceptance. The world shifted. Silver flames licked across her body, wrapping her in light. Her skin shimmered as if forged anew, veins glowing with molten steel. Her bones stretched, cracked, reformed. The scream that tore from her throat was no longer pain but birth, the sound of something ancient reawakening. Her form elongated, her limbs thickening with sinew and grace. For spread, white shot with silver fire. Her face lengthened, teeth gleaming, eyes igniting like twin moons. She stood, no longer girl, no longer exile, but something greater. A hybrid of flame and flesh, wolf and woman, ancient and reborn. The child of flame. The beasts that had stalked forward faltered. Their snarls broke into whimpers, their eyes lowering, unwilling to meet hers. Even the rival alphas felt it, their hackles rising not in defiance, but in fear. The earth groaned beneath her feet. Stones cracked, roots writhed as though the ground itself recognized her. The sky split with thunderless light, the moon haloed in fire. She lifted her head, and when her voice rang out, it was layered with echoes, her own and those of her bloodline, the voices of ancestors long buried. "I am not your sacrifice." Her words trembled the clearing. Wolves staggered back. Trees bent as though bowing. Kale sneered, but his eyes betrayed the flicker of fear. "You cannot run from what you are," he spat. Her gaze fixed on him, burning. "I am not running." The beasts lunged first. Shadows with claws like sickles, their jaws snapping for her throat. She moved like fire incarnate. One sweep of her arm unleashed a ribbon of silver flame that cut through three at once, their bodies dissolving into ash before they struck the ground. Another leapt, and she caught it midair, her hybrid strength crushing bone before casting it aside in a burning heap. Every strike fed the rhythm of her awakening. Every flame answered her call. She was no longer resisting the fire, she was wielding it. Elias arrived then, tearing through the tree lean, blood streaked across his chest, his eyes wide at the sight of her. For a heartbeat he froze, caught between awe and terror. But she did not look at him. She looked only at Kale. The elder stepped forward, calling shadows like a storm around him. His body swelled, for sprouting, his form twisting grotesque with dark power. He had drunk deep of forbidden rites, and the monster he became was no wolf, but something fouler. Twice her size, eyes black pits, voice a guttural roar. "You were never salvation," he snarled, fangs dripping shadow. "You were the weapon I needed." Solara's flame flared brighter, her voice steady, ringing. "You will never wield me." The battle roared. Kale lunged, his claws tearing furrows in the earth. She met him head-on, their collision cracking like thunder. Flame clashed with shadow, sparks and embers scattering across the battlefield. Wolf screamed as the shockwave flung them back. He struck like a storm, claws raking, jaws snapping. She answered with fire, her body moving with instinct sharper than memory, her power flowing like water turned to light. Every blow she landed burned with the weight of her ancestors. Every word she spoke reverberated with defiance. I am not your curse. A strike to his chest, flames searing fur. I am not your ruin. A slash of claws wreathed in fire, tearing shadow from his form. I am not your sacrifice. Her voice rose, splitting the night, as her fire engulfed him. Kale screamed as shadows tore from his body, unraveling into smoke. The earth beneath him split, swallowing his cries. The rival alphas, their courage broken, fell to their knees, their beasts scattering like ash in the wind. Solara stood in the center, chest heaving, body aflame but unconsumed. Around her, wolves lowered their eyes, some bowing, some trembling. The clearing stank of burnt earth and fear, but above it all one truth blazed. She was not their prey, not their curse, not their offering to appease shadows. She was fire. And fire did not bow. The battlefield held its breath. Ash drifted like pale snow, whispering through the clearing. Burnt soil cracked beneath the weight of silence. The last embers of her fire curled upward, silver tongues dissolving into the night, but the echo of her scream, the scream that had torn Kale into nothingness, still lingered in the marrow of every living creature present. No wolf moved. No alpha dared draw breath too loudly. The beasts who had charged so boldly now cowered in the tree line, eyes lowered, tails tucked. The enemy had not been defeated merely, they had been unmade by the sight of her. Solara stood in the center, her body trembling though her form remained alight. Her chest heaved, every inhale dragging the smoke of death into her lungs. Her hybrid shape towered, yet she looked fragile. Flames rippled across her skin, not roaring now, but pulsing softly, as if responding to the beat of her heart. She raised her gaze. Her eyes glowed, not wild, not mindless, but vast and knowing. Moons set aflame. They pierced the darkness and the crowd alike. And then, beneath their blinding blaze, something broke. A single tear slid down her cheek, cutting through ash and fire, glistening with the weight of everything lost. Her lips parted. Her voice trembled, carrying across the clearing, carrying into every ear, every heart, every silence. Do you see me now? The words cracked like prayer. Not triumphant, not victorious, but pleading. Her voice trembled on the edge of despair, of hope, of demand. It was the cry of a woman who had been denied, cursed, hunted. The cry of someone who had burned and still had to ask if she was visible. No answer came. The rival alphas lowered their heads, but none stepped forward. None dared. Fear rooted them to the ground, but so did awe. They did not know if she was goddess or monster, savior or executioner. They only knew she had broken the shadow and unmade their elder. Elias staggered toward her, each step uneven, his body torn by battle, but his eyes locked on hers. He stopped a few feet away, staring up at the creature she had become, the woman hidden inside the fire. His throat worked, words fighting to emerge, but none came. His hands shook. Was it from fear? Or the need to touch her? Solara lowered her head. For an instant, her flame dimmed, her hybrid form wavering as exhaustion cut through her. She looked at him, and through him, and beyond him, into the eyes of all who had watched her. The wolves who had called her cursed. The leaders who had named her sacrifice. The beasts who had howled for her blood. Her voice rose again, softer, breaking. Do you see me now? Tears streaked, sizzling against her burning skin, steam rising with every drop. And still, no one answered. Do you? Would you see her, truly see her, not as ruin, not as curse, but as woman? Would you fear the fire at her skin, or stand beside it? Would you tremble at her power, or take her hand as it trembles beneath the weight of destiny? The silence deepens. Wolves bow their heads. The ashes settle. Her flames dim, and yet she does not fall. She waits, not for their answer, but for yours. And you, listener, what would you choose? Would you walk forward, across that scorched ground, with the smell of smoke still in your throat, with your body shaking under the weight of what you've seen? Would you kneel to her as goddess, or meet her gaze as equal? The air holds the question like a blade against the chest. Would you fear her, or would you stand beside her? The fire cracks once more, a final ember hissing into the dark. If this story burned inside you, if you felt the ache of her tears, the fire in her scream, the tremor of her question, then come closer. Subscribe to Sophie's Romance Collections. Because here, we tell tales that scar and heal in equal measure. Here we burn. Here we rise. Here we are seen. The battlefield did not breathe. Ash hung suspended in the air, the broken clearing a graveyard of silence. Solara stood at the center, her body wrapped in the dim afterglow of her flame, every flicker of silver fire a testament to the storm she had unleashed. Wolves dared not meet her gaze. Rivals slunk into shadow. Even the wind seemed reluctant to stir, as though afraid to wake whatever power still simmered beneath her skin. Her chest rose and fell, each inhale labored, each exhale sharp. The ground beneath her feet smoked, scorched earth radiating heat into the soles of her body, grounding her even as her thoughts fractured. She felt the weight of every stare pressing into her back. Fear, awe, reverence, hatred. They all bled together until she could not tell one from the other. And yet, nothing moved to fill the silence. Elias stood closest, his body still battered, his throat tight with words he couldn't shape. His hand twitched once, half a reach, before he stilled it against his side. His jaw clenched. His eyes never left her, but his silence carved deeper wounds than any blade. Her flames pulsed once more, softer now, fragile, as though tied to the rhythm of her breaking heart. Her lips parted, a breathless whisper falling into the charged air. This isn't the end. The words scattered like sparks. The wolves flinched, some shrinking back, others stiffening as if bracing for another storm. Yet nothing followed. No firestorm. No cry. Only the faint echo of her voice weaving through the blackened trees. But then, a low vibration rippled through the earth. Subtle at first, like the pulse of something ancient beneath the soil. Pebbles shifted across the blood-stained ground. Cracks spiderwebbed wider in the charred dirt. The wolves lifted their heads, ears pricked, bodies trembling. The rumble deepened. A sound not born of earth nor sky, but something in between. Something watching. Something stirring. Solara's flames flickered higher, instinct responding to the threat. She turned her gaze to the horizon, her body tensing, every muscle taut as if she already knew. And there, at the jagged edge of the cliff above the clearing, a figure emerged. Shadows clung to him unnaturally, swallowing moonlight, cloaking his frame in darkness too thick to be natural. His outline was tall, rigid, his posture unyielding. His eyes glimmered faintly from within the void. Not silver like hers, not gold like Elias's, but something deeper. A hunger older than names. The wolves below whimpered. Some bowed their heads without meaning to, spines curving under a pressure they could not explain. Others snarled low, uncertain whether to fight or submit. Elias stiffened, shoulders squaring, his instincts torn between shielding her and facing what stood above. The figure's voice rolled down from the cliffside, low and resonant, each syllable vibrating through bone and blood. She is not the only one. The words struck like a curse. The clearing shuddered. The trees leaned inward as though listening. Solara's breath caught. Her flames surged violently, then dimmed, as if recoiling from the weight of his tone. Her body trembled, not from fear alone, but from the recognition buried beneath it, as if her blood had always known this presence, this shadow, this counterweight to her fire. The figure shifted, the faint curl of his mouth visible in the dark. A cruel, knowing smile. He leaned closer, voice slicing through the silence like a blade dipped in ice. The true alpha hasn't risen yet. The words echoed, twisting through the clearing, burrowing into marrow. Every wolf felt it. Every heart stuttered. The prophecy was not complete. The storm was not finished. Her fire was not the end, It was only the beginning. Solara's hands curled into fists, silver flame bursting once more along her arms. Yet her chest tightened. For the first time since her power had erupted, she felt small. Not powerless, but not alone in her fire. Somewhere out there, something darker, hungrier, older waited. Elias's voice broke the silence, raw and hoarse. "Who are you?" The figure only laughed. Low, resonant, cruel. The sound raked across the clearing, across their skin, across her trembling heart. And then, without another word, he vanished. Shadows swallowed him whole, leaving the cliff empty, the night heavier than before. The wolves shifted uneasily, eyes darting, whispers rising. Fear spread like wildfire where her flames had died. If she was not the end, then what was coming? Solara staggered, catching herself against the smoldering earth. Her tears had dried, but the echo of his words lodged deep, carving fear into the cracks of her resolve. She whispered again, but this time not to them. Not to Elias. Not even to herself. "This isn't over." The ground gave one last tremor, then stilled. The sky hung heavy, the moon swallowed by a veil of smoke. The battlefield remained scarred, broken, haunted. But the story was just beginning. You felt her fire. You saw her tears. You stood in the silence as the shadow spoke. Now you know, this is not the end. The storm has only opened. The true alpha is still to rise. And you must decide if you will be here when it does. A heartbeat echoes. Once. Twice. Louder. Closer. Will you return?